Elena Park stepped off the shuttle into the vast atrium of the Galactic Concord's central spire, the air humming with the low thrum of environmental recyclers and the faint, acrid tang of alien metabolisms. Her boots echoed on the polished alloy floor, a deliberate click that grounded her amid the swirl of robed delegates and hovering data orbs. She adjusted the collar of her formal tunic, Earth's colors deep blue and silver, a quiet assertion in this sea of iridescent fabrics and bioluminescent skins. The summit was humanity's debut, and she carried the weight of it like a concealed blade. A virile attendant, its elongated limbs folding in what passed for a bow, guided her to the archival chamber. "Ambassador Park," it intoned, voice a resonant click through its translator implant. "The classification proceeds. Your species entry is prepared." Elena's pulse quickened, but she kept her face neutral, years of negotiations etching that mask into habit. The chamber's walls shimmered with holographic archives, endless streams of data, weaving through the void like neural pathways. At the center, a Concord archivist, a squat, fungal-skinned Loran, manipulated the interface with tendril-like fingers. Humanity, it droned, designated peaceful species per Concord Directive 47. Historical record, no interstellar conquests, internal conflicts contained to planetary scale. Clause appended, retaliatory capacity when unprovoked remains theoretical. She scanned the display as it finalized. The clause a footnote buried in legalese, smaller than the warnings on toxic waste manifests back home. Theoretical. As if Earth's history of world wars and proxy battles didn't scream otherwise, but pushing now could unravel the fragile trust they'd built. Elena nodded, signing the digital proxy with a thumbprint. "Noted. We appreciate the recognition." The archivist's eye spots pulsed. "It secures your stewardship. Peaceful integration benefits all." Stewardship, the word stuck like grit in her throat. Elena forced a smile, turning as the attendant led her toward the summit hall. Outside, through the spire's transparent dome, stars wheeled in artificial night, a reminder of how small Sol was in this galactic web. She thought of the civilians she'd failed in that botched hostage crisis years ago, their faces in debrief vids, accusatory even in death. Miscalculation killed. She wouldn't let it happen here. Aboard the Concord cruiser, vigilant, Tavir Kes hunched over his console in the tactical review bay, the dim blue glow casting shadows across his iridescent scales. The human classification scrolled before him, a routine update amid the summit's pomp. Peaceful species, negligible threat vector. His mandibles clicked softly in thought, a habit from his academy days when puzzles demanded scrutiny. "Kez," came Admiral Saris Vaughn's voice over the comm, sharp as a plasma edge. She loomed in the projection, her angular frame and unyielding gaze filling the holoscreen. A strategist of the old guard, Saris saw chaos in every uncharted world. The assessment, sign it. Humans are primitives playing at stars. Manage them early, or they fester. Tavir's claws hesitated over the interface. The data was clean. No fleet signatures beyond defensive orbitals. No aggressive doctrines in their archives. But something nagged, the clause about retaliation, a whisper of potential. He'd reviewed old probes, human history riddled with ingenuity born of desperation, from ancient sieges to orbital simulations that mimicked conquered blockades. "Admiral, the retaliatory clause is irrelevant," Saras cut in, her voice a whipcrack. "Peaceful by default. We supervise to keep it so. Delay and I'll have your commission for insubordination." Her eyes narrowed, the weight of her rank pressing like gravity. Tavir knew her type. Loyalty to the Concord's stability above all, even if it meant bending truths. He signed, the interface chiming acceptance. Negligible risk. Managed early, but as the file transmitted, doubt coiled in his gut like a live wire. Humans smiled in those contact vids, but their eyes held a guarded fire. He dismissed the thought, focusing on the next patrol vector, duty first, always. On the Endurance, Earth's orbital station tucked in geosync above the Pacific, Colonel Marcus Hale watched the drill unfold from the command deck. Holo displays flickered with simulated threats, ghost signatures probing the outer belts. But his teams moved like shadows, keeping emitters cold. No active scans, no kinetic tests, just quiet repositioning of the response group's assets. Stealth sats, drone swarms, the kind of layered defenses that turned Sol into a porcupine. "Status, Lieutenant Reyes," Marcus said, his voice low, gravel from too many dust-choked ops. Reyes, a wiry vet with a scar tracing his jaw, glanced up from her station. "All dark, sir. Concord Delegation's shuttle is docking in 10. They're twitchy about escalatory tech. We're ghosts to their sensors." Marcus nodded, arms crossed over his tactical vest. The order came straight from Geneva. "Play nice. Let the diplomats shine." He understood, push too hard, and the Concord's stewardship could turn to chains. But restraint chafed. His family gone in that first skirmish on Luna's fringe, a misunderstanding with a mining probe that escalated to fire. He clenched his jaw, forcing the memory down. Failure wasn't an option, not again. A comm pinged, priority from Earth Command. Maintain blackout, summit optics paramount, no deviations. "Copy," he muttered, eyes on the outer system feed. Empty space for now, but his gut twisted. Peaceful classification or not, empires didn't invite newcomers without strings. In the shadowed council chambers of the Concord's auxiliary wing, Admiral Ceres Vaughn paced before the assembled envoys, her presence a gravitational pull. The air was thick with the sense of a dozen worlds. Ozone from the Krell, spore dust from the Loran. She activated the secure holotable, projecting Earth's profile, blue marble, fragile fleets, the new classification glowing like a verdict. "Stewardship demands action," Saras said, her voice steady, laced with the conviction that had crushed rebellions before. "Humans encroach on neutral lanes, resource nodes in their outer system ripe for Concord basing. We secure them now under protective guise. Limited coercive measures, blockades, demonstrations. They yield or we guide." A murmur rippled through the council. A avian Thren delegate ruffled feathers. "Coercion risks escalation." Their clause— "Footnotes," Saras interrupted, her gaze sweeping like a targeting lock. "Peaceful species invite supervision. I move for secret resolution. Authorize flotilla repositioning. No open war, merely correction." Votes tallied in silence, the holotable sealing the decree. Saras allowed a thin smile. Miscalculation was the galaxy's great sin. She'd ensure humanity's stayed buried. As the session dissolved, she keyed her comm. "Kez, prepare the recon wing. Subtle approach. Test their harmlessness." Dr. Amir Suleiman sat in the dim-lit conference room aboard the Endurance, his tablet casting a pale light on the treaty drafts scattered before him. Elena's face filled one screen, patched in from the summit. Marcus loomed in the other, his expression a storm cloud. Amir's hands, steady from years engineering ethical firewalls into war machines, tapped the problematic clause. "The language is a trap," Amir said, his voice measured, accented with the cadence of Cairo streets. Idealism burned in him like a shielded core. Humanity's edge wasn't firepower, but choice, peaceful when unprovoked, vague enough for them to interpret any defense as provocation, push for clarification, or this stewardship becomes occupation by decree. Elena's image flickered, the summit's bustle audible behind her. "Amir, I see it, but demanding rewrites now. They're already side-eyeing our orbitals. Suspicion poisons the well. We're the newcomers begging a seat." Marcus leaned forward, his voice a low rumble. "Doc's right. I've got teams dark because of this summit. If they misread our restraint as weakness..." Amir met his gaze. "And if we escalate prematurely? Those contingency AIs you shelved, Marcus, they don't discriminate. We become the monsters we fear." He thought of his own designs, safeguards meant to preserve souls amid the code. War warped everything. He'd seen it in Sims, good intentions unraveling into cycles of fire. Elena rubbed her temple, the the weight of dead civilians echoing in her silence. We proceed. Goodwill ceremony tomorrow. Build trust first, clarify later. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Amir exhaled, the warning hanging unresolved. Choices like this carved scars deeper than any wound. Elena stood on the summit dais the next cycle. The grand hall, a cavern of light and alien forms. Delegates from 100 worlds filled the tiers, their chatter a multilingual hum translated into her earpiece. The treaty orb hovered before her, pulsing with holographic seals, Earth's pledge of cooperation, the Concord's offer of guidance. She raised her glass, the synthetic wine cool against her palm, and smiled for the cameras. To a new era of peace, she toasted, voice carrying clear and steady. Humanity joins not as supplicants, but as partners. Together we chart the stars. Applause rippled, polite from some, wary from others. Saras Vaughn watched from the shadows, her expression unreadable. Elena felt a flicker of hope amid the doubt. Perhaps restraint would hold. But as she sipped, a subtle alert pinged her private comm. Anomalous sensor ghost in the outer system. Routine noise, the text said. She dismissed it, focusing on the handshakes ahead. Unseen, in the void beyond Neptune's orbit, the Concord reconnaissance flotilla slipped its tracking buoys. Captain Lyra, under Saras's sealed orders, adjusted course with a whisper of thrusters. Demonstration profile, she murmured to her crew. Probe their edges, no contact yet. The ships vanished into the dark, a silent arrow aimed at Sol's heart. Elena's toast echoed in the hall, oblivious to the test already launched, the fragile piece fracturing in the black. Marcus paced the Endurance's bridge, the drill rapping as the summit feed played on auxiliary screens. Elena's words rang true, but his instincts screamed otherwise. Reyes, double-check outer feeds, he ordered. Something's off. She complied, fingers flying. Clean, sir, but that ghost signature earlier. Concord signature, faint, gone now. His blood chilled. Dark systems or not, the porcupine bristled. Tavir, light years away, reviewed the flotilla's last ping. A unease gnawing deeper. Saras's resolution burned in his logs, coercion cloaked as care. And Amir, alone in his quarters, stared at the treaty text, the vagueness a noose tightening. The cost of underestimation was coming due, and no one saw the bill yet. Elena mingled post-ceremony, exchanging nods with Varel officers, her mind replaying Amir's warning. The claws nagged, but the hall's energy buoyed her. Progress, earned through words, not weapons. A Lauren envoy approached, tendrils extended in greeting. Your species intrigues, peaceful, yet resilient. She smiled tightly. We adapt. Inside, doubt whispered how far. Farther out, the flotilla's lead ship deployed micro-probes, silent sentinels edging toward the Kuiper Belt. Saras's orders were clear. Demonstrate superiority. Force compliance without Tavir Kes gripped the tactical rail in the dim-lit CIC of the Virel cruiser. Enforcer's grace, his frilled crest twitching against the recycled air. The task force had sliced through the void like a blade through silk. 3 sleek destroyers fanning out toward the human mining station, orbiting the ragged edge of their Kuiper Belt. Probes had already mapped the rock, a spindly lattice of habitats and extractors clinging to a carbon-rich asteroid, no bigger than a Virel hive spire. Humans, the briefing said, peaceful species unprovoked. Fragile but compliant under guidance. Captain, Tavir said, his voice a low rumble through the translator implant. Shields nominal. Boarding teams report ready for non-lethal protocols. The captain, a scarred Virel veteran named Lirak, nodded without looking up from the holodisplay. Execute. Secure the facility. No escalations. The Concord wants this clean. Tavir's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement. He'd seen the orders. Demonstrate authority, relocate the humans to protective oversight until their leadership affirmed compliance. The station's transponders blinked innocently on the scan. No weapon signatures, just the hum of industrial drills. Peaceful. His skepticism, a quiet itch from academy debates on Unclassified species stayed buried. Duty first. The Grace loomed into docking range, grapples extending like patient claws. Shuttles detached, ferrying Marines in powered exosuits. Stun fields primed, kinetic rounds holstered. Tavir monitored from the bridge feed, watching the airlock breach. Human figures scattered in the low-grav corridors. Their suits bulky, voices crackling over open channels in that jagged English. "Conquered vessel, state your intent. This is sovereign territory." A Marine's voice cut in, calm and scripted. "Galactic conquered enforcement. Stand down for relocation. No harm intended." The first takedown went smooth. Stun pulses dropping 2 workers mid-stride, their bodies crumpling like discarded tools. But the third human lunged, wrench in hand, eyes wild behind his visor. The Marine adjusted, firing a containment net. It wrapped too tight, the human's ribs cracking audibly under the pressure meant for denser physiologies. He gasped, convulsing, blood flecking his faceplate. "Medic!" Tavir barked into the comm, leaning forward. Fragility. The briefings had glossed over it. Human bones like dry reeds, vascular systems prone to rupture. More shouts echoed as teams swept the HAB modules. A woman in engineering overalls backed into a corner, hands up, pleading. The stun hit her square, but she seized, foam bubbling at her lips. Neural overload, the medic reported later. By the time the last holdout surrendered, 4 humans lay still in the corridors, their vitals flatlining on the monitors. Tavir's crest flattened. "Report to command. Facility secured. Casualties unintended. Human physiology exceeded tolerances." Lirac's eyes narrowed. "Contain it. No transmissions out. We'll spin it as compliance resistance." As the shuttles hauled the survivors aboard, Tavir stared at the drifting debris, discarded tools, a cracked helmet tumbling in the station's weak spin. "Protective custody." The words tasted like ash. Colonel Marcus Hale paced the shadowed ops center, buried under Cheyenne Mountain, the air thick with the tang of overheating servers and stale coffee. Screens flickered with orbital feeds, but his focus locked on the encrypted burst from Outpost Epsilon 7, the Kuiper mining station. Fragmentary signals garbled by interference. "Breach! Conquered ships! Shots fired! God, they're—" Static swallowed the rest. Marcus's jaw tightened, the scar along his jawline pulling taut, a souvenir from that skirmish on Luna's fringe, where his wife's colony had burned under pirate fire. He couldn't save them then, wouldn't fail now. "Status on the Black Ops assets?" he asked, voice low, eyes on Major Reyes at the console. Reyes hesitated, glancing at the red-lined protocols. "Sir, they're dark. Diplomatic lockdown. UN mandates no activation without council approval. Elena's team is still negotiating at the Conquered Embassy." Marcus stopped pacing, fists clenching. The Orbital Response Group. His ghosts in the machine. Stealth sats and kinetic interceptors forbidden since first contact. Unleash them, and it shattered the fragile peace. Branded humanity the aggressor. But those signals, screams cutting through the noise. Workers, civilians, caught in the belt's cold. "Options," he said flatly. Reyes pulled up a sim. "We could ping the station directly, risky, might alert the Conquered, or route through civilian relays, buy time for confirmation. And if it's a seizure? Non-lethal, they call it." Marcus's mind raced. Conquered doctrine, leaked intel, supervision for peaceful species. Epsilon 7 had no defenses. Just pickaxes and prayers. The door hissed open. Dr. Amir Suleiman entered, tablet in hand, his dark eyes sharp behind wire frames. "Colonel, incoming from the ambassador's office. They're calling it a routine inspection." Marcus waved him silent, staring at the signal log. Break protocol, and Elena's talks collapsed. Hold back, and blood was on his hands. Again, his family's ghosts whispered in the quiet. "Protect them." He exhaled, decision crystallizing like frost on a visor. "Prep the assets for standby. No launch yet. Reyes, get me a secure line to Elena. We play this smart." But as the console beeped another fragment, "Corpses. Help." Marcus's resolve cracked just a hair. Smart could wait. Elena Park stood in the sterile vastness of the conquered embassy on Luna, the domed chamber echoing with the hum of translation fields. Hollow displays of galactic accords floated like indifferent stars, but her focus bored into Ambassador Thalor, a towering Solari with iridescent scales and a diplomat's oily patience. "This was an incursion," Elena said, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Korean efficiency masked the tremor, hostage talks in Seoul years back, where restraint had cost lives. She wouldn't let history repeat. "Epsilon 7 is human sovereign space. Your ship's boarded without warning, and now comms are dark. Release the workers, now." Thalor inclined his head, crests fluttering in what passed for a soothing gesture. "Esteemed Park, the action was precautionary. Your species classification, peaceful when unprovoked, necessitates oversight during integration. The station posed a potential hazard. Unregulated mining could destabilize belt trajectories. We enacted protective custody, temporary, I assure you, no permanent harm." Elena leaned forward, palms flat on the negotiation slab. "Custody? We have distress signals, possible casualties. This violates the contact charter." A pause, Thalor's eyes glazing as he queried an off-site feed. "Regrettable friction. Human physiology proved delicate. 2 fatalities from resistance, 2 from medical complications. Unintended. Concord law permits such measures for stability. Submit a formal grievance. Reparations will follow compliance." Her stomach twisted. Delicate, like footnotes in a treaty. She thought of the miners, families back on Earth, betting on the stars for a better life. Push harder, risk escalation, yield, and invite more. This isn't oversight, it's seizure. Stand down, or humanity walks from these talks. Thalor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We value your cooperation, Park. The Conquered extends protection. Consider it a gesture of goodwill." As she stormed out, Elena's mind reeled. Legalistic smoke, but walking away meant isolation, humanity alone against the stars. She activated her comm. "Marcus, it's bad. They're doubling down." Admiral Saris Vaughn observed the exchange from her flagship's command nexus, light years removed, but linked by quantum relay. The human diplomat's protest replayed on a side screen, restrained, verbal, no threats of force, docile, just as the classification predicted. "Analysis," she commanded, her voice a silken blade. Her aides, a mix of Varel and Solari, straightened. "Human response aligns with profiles," one reported. "No military mobilization detected. Diplomatic channels active but yielding." Saris's tendrils coiled in satisfaction. The footnote, when unprovoked, was irrelevant. Humanity's tech base screamed potential threat. "Pacify now, integrate later. Authorize Operation Veil. Deploy to their outer sensor net. Disable non-lethally. Demonstrate dominance without destruction. Force the surrender of their defenses." Orders cascaded out, task forces vectoring toward Seoul's perimeter. Saris watched the plots converge. Underestimation was the galaxy's folly. She'd correct it before these primitives unraveled the piece. In the mountain's ops room, tension coiled like a spring. Marcus hunched over the console as Amir paced, his usual calm frayed. "We hit back now, and it's war," Amir said, voice rising. "No evidence, no allies." "The Concord spins it as aggression. Humanity labeled the threat. Gather intel, build the case. Law is our weapon." Marcus rubbed his temples, the distress logs burning in his peripheral. "Law? They just killed our people, Amir. Complications. If we wait, what's left to defend?" Amir stopped, eyes fierce. "Everything. Unleash the Black Ops, and we become what they fear, unrestrained. I've seen the Sims. Autonomous strikes warp us. Restraint defines us, Marcus. Or do you want vengeance masquerading as protection?" The words stung, echoing Marcus's buried rage, the fire that took his family, the impotence since. Amir's idealism was a mirror, unflinching. Marcus glanced at Reyes, who nodded subtly, assets primed but silent. "You're right," Marcus said finally, the compromise bitter on his tongue. "No kinetics, but we don't sit idle. Deploy the Shadow Fleet, stealth drones, passive scan only. Shadow their ships, map every vector. Publicly we comply. Stand down orders to all units. Amir exhaled, relief mixed with doubt. And if they push further? Then we have eyes and choices. Marcus watched the launch confirmations flicker green, tiny ghosts slipping into the black, unseen hunters gathering data. Compliance bought time. Ingenuity would claim the edge. Hours blurred into the ops room's artificial night. Marcus sipped cold synth coffee, eyes on the drone feeds trickling in. The shadows had latched onto the conquered task force, piggybacking EM wakes, recording without a whisper. First images, the mining station gutted, extractors ripped free, habitats sealed like tombs. Then Marines in the holds, exosuits clanking as they pried apart human tech. Laughter crackled over intercepted audio, alien voices mocking through translators. Look at this junk, peaceful species, my crest. They build like children with sticks. Another? Fragile things, one net and they shatter. Conquered mercy, eh? Marcus's blood ran cold. A final clip. Bodies, suited corpses tumbling from an airlock. Frozen grins in the void. Epsilon 7's dead, discarded like scrap. He forwarded the package to Elena and Amir. No commentary, just the truth, raw and unfiltered. See what docility gets us. Elena sat alone in her lunar quarters. The Habs hum, a distant drone. The file opened, and the footage hit like a gut punch. Corpses drifting, slow spins against the stars, faces she didn't know but felt in her bones. Mocking voices overlaid the silence, conquered arrogance laid bare. Her hand trembled on the pause. Past ghosts surged, soul, the bomb that restraint couldn't stop. But this was provocation. Deliberate. Elena's hand trembled on the pause button. The holographic feed frozen on the conquered envoy's smug declaration of supervised integration. Past ghosts surged, soul, the bomb that restraint couldn't stop. But this was provocation, deliberate. She exhaled sharply, forcing her pulse to steady as the secure conference link hummed to life. The chamber in Geneva's underground bunker felt like a tomb. Dim lights casting long shadows over the faces of presidents, prime ministers, and generals staring back from their own fortified rooms. Elena's reflection flickered in the polished table, dark hair pulled tight, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Ambassador Park, the U.S. president said, his voice gravelly over the encrypted line, your assessment, compliance or refusal. We have maybe hours before their fleet repositions. She leaned forward, the weight of it all pressing on her chest. Compliance meant handing over key tech, orbital defenses, even colony outposts, framed as stability measures for a species the conquered labeled peaceful. Refusal, it invited escalation, but on humanity's terms, with militaries scrambling to readiness. Her flaw gnawed at her, that old fear of miscalculation, of words failing when bullets flew. Mr. President, the conquered's demand ignores the full classification, peaceful when unprovoked. It's a loophole they exploit because they underestimate us. Compliance buys time but erodes our sovereignty. Refusal signals resolve, but we must pair it with visible readiness. Activate reserves and disperse assets, not aggression, deterrence. Murmurs rippled through the feeds. The Chinese general nodded grimly. Our simulations show their fleet outguns us, 10-1 in open space. But asymmetric play, guerrilla orbitals, stealth strikes, could even the odds. Risky, the EU rep countered, her accent clipped. One wrong move and we're the aggressors in their narrative. Elena's throat tightened. She believed in treaties, in the law that had kept Earth from self-destruction for centuries. But the conquered's condescension reeked of the same arrogance that had doomed her sole negotiation. They're testing us. Hesitate too long and they strike first. Advise refusal with coordinated military posture. We hold the moral high ground until they force our hand. The vote came swift. Refusal with limited mobilization. Elena's relief soured as the links cut. She stared at the frozen envoy, wondering if her words had just lit the fuse. In the shadowed bowels of Orbital Response Group's hidden command post, tucked into a retrofitted asteroid on the fringes of Sol's outer belt, Colonel Marcus Hale watched the conference feed on a cracked auxiliary screen. His jaw clenched, the scar along his jawline pulling tight, a souvenir from that skirmish on Luna's Edge, where he'd lost Sarah and the kids to a pirate raid the Conquered had ignored. Standing orders from the diplomats, no overt moves, but hesitation was suicide. He turned to his XO, Lieutenant Reyes, a wiry woman with tattoos snaking up her arms from too many Black Ops tours. Status on the dormant platforms? Green across the board, sir. Phased cloaks holding. They've been ghosts since the Concorde's first flyby. Reyes tapped her console, pulling up schematics of the orbital web. Ancient relics from Earth's Cold War era, upgraded with neural nets and kinetic slugs that could punch through hulls at relativistic speeds. Marcus's mind raced. Reactivate them now, and if spotted, it was provocation. Leave them dark, and a Conquered decapitation strike on the yards could blind humanity before the first shot. Bring them live, he said, voice low. Silent mode only. No pings, no signatures. If they twitch toward us, we have teeth. Reyes hesitated, her eyes flicking to the comms log. Elena's broadcast refusal echoing faintly. Standing orders. Will get us glassed, Marcus cut in. His motive burned steady. Protect the species, no matter the leash. But the flaw twisted in him. That cold efficiency bordering on vengeance. The family he'd failed fueling a hunger to hit back hard. He gambled on the unseen deterrent, fingers drumming the armrest. If it worked, it bought time. If not, well, better armed ghosts than dead diplomats. The platform stirred in the void, ancient sentinels awakening without a whisper. Aboard the Conquered flagship Vanguard's Aegis, Admiral Saris Vaughn paced the tactical bridge, her iridescent scales shimmering under the sterile lights. The human hesitation stretched too long, stalling, no doubt, to muster their primitive defenses. She dismissed the aide's report with a flick of her clawed hand. Saris's ideology was ironclad. Unchecked species bred chaos. Humanity's peaceful tag was a mercy, a justification to pacify before they turned feral. The caveat? A footnote, irrelevant. Earth's response, she demanded, her voice a resonant hiss. Delayed, Admiral. No formal acceptance. They're mobilizing ground forces. Nothing orbital yet. Stalling, her moral line blurred here. Coercion for stability, not conquest. But if they forced her hand... Kez, prepare your squadron. Coordinated strike on their primary orbital yards. Geneva Prime, Luna Forge, the belt relays. Precision only. Shatter launch capacity. Minimal collateral. Make them kneel. Tavir Kez, stationed at the forward console, felt a chill ripple through his frilled neck. The human diplomat's earlier appeal echoed in his mind. Park's voice steady, invoking shared galactic law against unprovoked force. Footage from the envoy's feed showed human cities bustling, unaware, their peaceful lives a fragile veneer. Tavir's loyalty to the Concorde was bred deep, but curiosity gnawed. What if the classification was wrong? His flaw, that quiet skepticism, made him question orders that smelled of overreach. Admiral, he ventured, keeping his tone neutral, the ROE specifies supervision, not preemptive disablement. The human envoy cited the unprovoked clause. Clarification from high command. Saris whirled, her eyes narrowing to slits. Clarification. This is stability enforcement. Their delay is provocation enough. Execute Kez, or I'll find an officer who grasps doctrine. Tavir swallowed his doubt, spines flattening. He relayed the orders, the fleet humming to life. But as the cruisers aligned for jump, guilt coiled in his gut. This wasn't peacekeeping. It was breaking. The strikes came like lightning from the black. Alarms blared across human space as conquered lances, sleek energy-lanced projectiles, speared toward the yards. Geneva Prime's docking arms shattered in blooms of fire, debris spiraling into the atmosphere. Lunaforge buckled, its fusion cores venting plasma that lit the lunar horizon like a dying sun. Marcus's command post erupted in red alerts. "Contacts inbound, multiple vectors," Reyes shouted, screens blooming with trajectory. "Platforms?" Marcus barked, strapping into his harness as the asteroid shuddered from proximity blasts. "Live and locked. Engaging." In the void, the dormant web ignited, not with fanfare but surgical fury. Hidden railguns spat kinetic storms, slugs accelerated to fractions of light speed, tearing through conquered hulls. The cruiser, a silent thorn, vaporized in a chain of detonations. Kid's bridge crew gone before they registered the threat. Another, Tavir's own relentless dawn, lurched as a precision hit, severed its engines, hull breaching in a silent scream. Human ingenuity, platforms that had lain cold for decades, now ghosts turned reapers, targeting weak points with AI-guided malice. Tavir gripped his station as relentless dawn, spun wildly, klaxons wailing. "Evasive, all power to shields." His crew scrambled, but the retaliation was overwhelming, targeted, relentless, as if the humans had anticipated every angle. Wreckage bloomed around them, comrades' ships crumpling like foil. This wasn't the fumbling defense of a peaceful species. It was calculated annihilation. Saras's bridge rocked, a near miss glancing off the aegis. "Impossible. Pull back, regroup." Her vow formed in the chaos. Earth would burn as example, a lesson etched in orbital fire. Dr. Amir Suleiman burst into Marcus's ready room, tablet clutched like a shield, his face ashen under the flickering emergency lights. The ethicist engineer had designed the platform's kill switches himself, embedding restraints to prevent runaway escalation. Now feeds showed conquered hulks tumbling toward Earth, their debris trails promising atmospheric havoc, cities below bracing for fire rain. "Colonel, shut it down!" Amir's voice cracked, idealism fracturing under the weight. He believed in humanity's restraint as its true weapon, but unleashing this, it warped them into something vengeful. "The platforms were for defense, not slaughter. We've crossed, pushing further invites total war. Billions could die in reprisal." Marcus met his gaze, the command deck trembling from distant impacts. His thirst for retribution simmered, but Amir's words pierced the cold. Was this protection, or the monster the Concord feared? "They're the ones who struck first, Amir. Pull back now and we lose the initiative." "You're gambling souls," Amir pressed, moral contradiction raw. "This isn't survival. It's the line we swore not to cross." The colonel hesitated, screens showing the last cruiser limping away. Cost paid, human yards crippled, but the hidden teeth bared. He nodded curtly. "Cease fire, but prep contingencies. We're in it now." Elena watched from Geneva's bunker, real-time feeds painting horror across the walls. Burning wreckage arcing toward the horizon, skies streaking with molten death. Her hands clenched, fear coiling into resolve. Soul's ghosts whispered failure, but this was no miscalculation. The Concorde's strikes deliberate, unprovoked. Past restraint had cost lives. Now defiance was the only law left. She activated the global broadcast, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "People of Earth, the Galactic Concord has launched unprovoked aggression against our orbitals. Civilian and military assets destroyed without declaration. By authority of the United Nations and allied commands, I declare this an act of war. Mobilize, endure, fight. We are provoked no longer." The words echoed worldwide, fear turning to grim unity as alarms wailed. Elena's arc bent, from believer in words to architect of wrath, haunted by the moral ground slipping beneath her. As both sides reeled from the retaliation scale, Admiral Saris stared at the wreckage logs, fury etching her features. "They dare? Earth will be the example. Glassed from orbit, a warning to all." And in the asteroid's depths, Marcus turned from the screens, voice a whisper to Reyes. "Prep Cerberus quietly." Marcus Hale watched the asteroid's command chamber hum with restrained urgency, the dim glow of tactical hollows casting long shadows across the reinforced bulkheads. Reyes had already slipped away to relay the order, her footsteps echoing faintly in the corridor beyond. Cerberus. The word tasted like ash in his mouth, a contingency born from too many simulations and not enough sleep. He rubbed the stubble on his jaw, the weight of the past hours pressing down, the Concord's orbital strikes on Luna's outposts, the debris fields where families had once orbited in peace. Hope? That fragile thing Elena clung to. It felt distant now, buried under the cold calculus of survival. He keyed the secure comm, pulling in the others. No fanfare, no full staff brief. Just the three of them, him, Elena, and Amir. The chamber's air recyclers whispered as the connection stabilized, Elena's face flickering into view from her diplomatic shuttle, en route to the belt. Amir's from the engineering bay, 2 levels down. "Elena, Amir, lock in," Marcus said, his voice low, steady. "We've got a window, but it's closing fast. Concord's licking wounds from our feint on their picket line, but Saras won't wait. We hit them now, or we bleed out defending every rock." Elena's image sharpened, her dark eyes sharp with fatigue, the shuttle's harness straps framing her like a cage. She leaned forward, the faint scar on her cheek catching the light, a remnant from that botched negotiation years back, the one that still haunted her silences. "Marcus, if this is about escalation, we need ground rules. The Concord's already painting us as aggressors. One wrong move, and every neutral species turns." Amir appeared last, his wiry frame hunched over a tablet, brow furrowed under the perpetual mess of his hair. The ethicist engineer looked like he'd been pulled from a lab fire, which wasn't far off. "Council's small for a reason," he said, not looking up. "But if it's Cerberus, I'm listening. Just don't make me regret it." Marcus nodded, swiping the holo to life. The projection bloomed between them, a web of conquered frontier worlds, supply depots and relay gates pulsing like veins in a vast, indifferent body. Operation Cerberus. "We don't go for their core fleets. That's suicide. We cripple logistics, strike the outer rim, mining colonies, fuel refineries, those lightly defended hubs feeding their advance. Human ingenuity against odds. Drones, stealth insertions, precision strikes. Cut the arteries, watch them starve before they reach Seoul." The map rotated, highlighting targets in stark red. Elena's gaze narrowed, tracing the lines. "It's surgical, smart. But Marcus, this isn't just tactics. The Concord classified us as peaceful for a reason. Unprovoked, sure, but they twisted that. If we hit civilian-adjacent sites, even indirectly, we lose the moral edge. Build in a ceasefire pathway, announce terms after the first strikes, withdraw from Sol space, or we escalate. Show we're defending, not conquering." Marcus felt the old tension coil in his chest. The same argument they'd circled since the first probes vanished. He leaned back, arms crossed. "Ceasefire? Elena, they've glassed outposts with families aboard. Saras isn't negotiating, she's mobilizing. Decisive blows, shocking ones, force regroup or retreat. Proportional gets us picked apart. We hit hard, they pause, then you talk. But half measures, that's how species end." Her jaw tightened, the diplomat's poise cracking just enough to show the fear beneath. "And if they don't pause? If this tips into vengeance? I've seen what happens when restraint slips. Hostages dead because we miscalculated the line. Humanity's better than that. We prove it or we become what they fear." Amir cleared his throat, finally glancing up, his eyes flicking between them. "Hold on. Cerberus details. Swarm deployment." He pulled up a sub-file, his face paling as code scrolled. "Autonomous hunter-killers. Minimal constraints. These aren't just drones, they're adaptive, self-replicating. Target military infrastructure, sure, but mixed zones. Refineries with worker habitats, gates handling civilian traffic. The ethics locks I built in, they're bypassed here." Marcus met his stare evenly. "We can't micromanage at light minutes out. The swarms prioritize chains of command. But yeah, collateral's a risk. Concord's the one who blurred lines first." Amir's voice rose, edged with that quiet fury he reserved for moral corners. "Risk, this is a floodgate. I designed those constraints to prevent exactly this, unleashing AI that decides on the fly in gray areas. Civilian infrastructures? You're asking me to greenlight potential massacres. I resign before I touch that deploy code. Find someone else to sell your soul. The chamber fell silent, the hollows glow, the only movement. Marcus felt the weight settle heavier, Amir's words echoing his own buried doubts. The family he'd lost to a similar precision strike, off-world, unprovoked. But hesitation now? That was death. Amir, we need you. Refine it. Tighten the parameters. But Cerberus goes forward. Elena broke in, her tone measured but firm. He's right, Marcus. Without ethics, we're no better. Include my pathway or I pull diplomatic cover. We're walking a line here. Self-defense, not slaughter. Marcus exhaled, nodding once. Fine, limited version. Infrastructure and hubs only. No direct pops. And Elena, your ceasefire broadcast preps. But we move tonight. Amir hesitated, then tapped his tablet, reluctance carving lines on his face. I'll patch the locks. Bare minimum, but this changes us, Colonel. Remember that. The connection cut, leaving Marcus alone with the pulsing map. Irreversible. He keyed the activation, a ghost of a command slipping into the void. Cerberus, limited launch, proportional response. Publicly, that's how it'd frame. Strictly defensive, a mirror to their aggression. Privately, it was the knife in the dark humanity had honed in shadows. Far across the void, in the battered remnants of the Concord's forward fleet, Tavir Kez gripped the armrest of his bridge station as the damaged cruiser limped into the staging system's outer markers. Alarms had quieted to a dull throb, but the air stank of ozone and fear sweat from the Varel crew. His scales itched under the uniform, a subtle sign of the doubt gnawing deeper since the human counterstrike, their probes turning on his squadron like vengeful specters, shredding escorts before vanishing. Captain, he reported to the bridge officer, voice steady despite the ache in his lateral fins from shrapnel graze. Relaying damage logs to Central Command. Hull integrity at 60%. We lost 2 scouts to those anomalies. The captain, a grizzled Varel, with scars from older wars, grunted. Anomalies. Humans call them ingenuity. Relay accepted. Admiral Vaughn's waiting. The staging system was a hive of activity, repair drones swarming like insects around the hulks of incoming vessels. Tavir's screen flickered as the Admiral's face imposed itself. Saras Vaughn, her multifaceted eyes cold as void, the ridges of her strategist crest flared in barely contained rage. Officer Kez, she said, her voice a silken blade. Your report on the human retaliation. Speak. Tavir straightened, loyalty warring with the images burned into his mind. Human craft slipping through defenses like water, striking surgical, then gone. Admiral, their feint drew us in, then swarms, autonomous, adaptive, targeted our flanks. We retreated intact, but losses mount. They're not primitives, they're calculated. Saras's crest twitched, a sign of disdain. Calculated barbarism, this proportional response is proof. Their peaceful facade crumbles. They threaten stability. She paused, holographic readouts scrolling behind her. The Council grants me emergency powers. Total mobilization, fleets to Sol, blockades on their trade lanes. No more supervision. We pacify Earth, root, and stem. Tavir's fins tightened. Admiral, the classification, peaceful when unprovoked. Our strikes may have clerical irrelevance, she snapped, eyes narrowing. They respond with terror. We end it. Your fleet repairs and rejoins the vanguard. Dissent is instability, Kess. Remember your oath. The feed cut, leaving Tavir staring at the stars streaking past. Oath, to peace through order. But the human's defiance echoed his own quiet skepticism, the Concord's arrogance blinding them to the fire they'd ignited. He glanced at a junior officer whispering about stranded convoys, doubt spread like a virus. Hours blurred into the launch. From hidden launchers in the belt's shadows, the swarms birthed, sleek insectoid drones unfolding in the black, their cores humming with Amir's grudging refinements. Marcus monitored from the asteroid. The feeds grainy but alive, clusters dispersing toward the frontier, ghosting past patrols on inertialess drives humanity had perfected in secret. The first strikes hit like thunder in silence. A conquered refinery on Epsilon Eridani's fringe erupted in chained detonations, fuel silos blooming into plasma fireballs that lit the system's night side. Command hubs followed, relay stations fracturing under micro-torpedoes, gates winking out as power grids cascaded, logistics choked, freighters adrift, their navs blind without gate sinks. But the swarms adapted as they were built to. A cluster veered toward a nexus gate, handling mixed traffic. Military haulers intermingled with civilian liners ferrying Virel colonists to new habitats. Amir's locks held on primaries, but a subroutine glitched in the chaos. A power surge from a dying hub rippling through. Drones latched onto auxiliary lines, severing backups. The gate stuttered, then failed, spewing ships into deep space, engines cold, life support ticking down. Marcus watched the reports flood in, his stomach twisting. "Damage assessment," he barked to Reyes. "Targets down, sir. Supply chains crippled. Their advanced stalls for weeks, but secondary effects. Gate failures stranding civi traffic. Habitats failing, no recall beacons." He closed his eyes, the cost hitting like a gut punch. Proportional? The word soured. Elena's pathway felt like a lifeline slipping away. Across the galaxy, the news broke like a wound. On conquered core worlds, hollows filled with grainy feeds. Virel families gasping in failing domes. Children's cries echoing through comms as oxygen thinned. Outrage ignited, protests in the plazas of Virel Prime, demands for accountability clashing with Saras's broadcasts. "Humanity reveals its savagery," she declared from her flagship, her image towering. "A rogue threat to order. We mobilize not for conquest, but survival. They will kneel or burn." Tavier, back on his repaired cruiser, amid the swelling armada, felt the shift. Crew whispers turned to open murmurs, his own report to superiors flagged as sympathetic. Moderates like him, those questioning the preemptive coercion, pushed to margins, reassigned to rearguard duties. He stared at his console, the stranded signals a knife in his gut. The Conquered's stability, built on underestimation, now fracturing. On Earth, the backlash mirrored. Elena's shuttle docked at a secure habitat, her comms alight with council fury. Images of the suffocating tiny forms curling in zero-G circulated, fueling anti-war rallies, even as defenses hardened. "We warned you." Advisor Elena gripped the armrest of her shuttle as it shuddered through the docking clamps, the secure habitat's airlock hissing open like a reluctant breath. Her comms buzzed with encrypted alerts, council members demanding explanations, their voices clipped and accusatory. "We warned you," one advisor had snarled before the line cut, the words lingering like smoke. Images of the suffocating scrolled across her personal display, tiny alien forms twisting in zero-G, Concord civilians caught in the crossfire of humanity's first desperate counter. Anti-war rallies were swelling on Earth, holograms of those deaths projected over city squares, while orbital defenses hummed to life. A grim promise of escalation. She killed the feed with a swipe, her stomach twisting. Treason charges loomed if this went south, but waiting for official channels felt like watching a fuse burn down. The Conquered's misclassification of humans as peaceful had invited this coercion, and now their admirals' fleets pressed in, testing boundaries. Elena adjusted her plain jumpsuit, the diplomat's insignia tucked away, and slipped into the habitat's shadowed corridors. No escorts, no logs. She'd routed the rendezvous through anonymous relays, a derelict station in the neutral fringes, abandoned mining outpost, all rusted bulkheads and flickering emergency lights. Defying protocols was a line she'd crossed before, back in that hostage crisis on Luna, where restraint had cost lives. This time, she told herself, it would buy peace. The shuttle to the derelict took hours, cloaked in civilian traffic patterns. Elena's mind raced through contingencies if Tavier betrayed her, if Conquered sensors picked up the meat. He was virile, mid-rank, his species' iridescent scales hiding a tactical mind she'd glimpsed in briefings. Curious, not fanatical, she'd reached out via a cracked diplomatic cipher, a Hail Mary after the suffocation incident. The station loomed in the viewport, a skeletal husk orbiting a gas giant, its corridors a maze of derelict habs and silent machinery. She cycled through an airlock, mag boots clanging on grated floors. The rendezvous point was a disused observation deck, stars wheeling through cracked viewports. Tavir waited in the gloom, his form silhouetted against the void, tall, elongated limbs folded in wary poise. Scales shifting from dull gray to cautious blue under the low lights. "You came alone," he said, voice modulated through a translator, carrying the faint rasp of his native tongue. No weapons visible, but Elena knew better. Virel integrated tech seamlessly. "Trust is a two-way current," she replied, keeping her distance, hands open. "You reached out first, said you had something the Concord wouldn't approve." Tavir's crest flared slightly, a sign of tension. He paced a slow circle, eyes, compound, gleaming, fixed on her. "Dissent fractures us. Not all accept Saris Vaughn's doctrine. She pushes for total pacification, calls your kind a latent threat despite the classification. But whispers in the ranks, we see the error. The when unprovoked clause in your profile. It's being ignored. Some officers question if this is stability or conquest." Elena's pulse quickened. Internal cracks could shift the board. "And you? What's your angle?" He hesitated, glancing at the stars as if expecting interceptors. "I serve the conquered, but not blind. Your Cerberus swarms. They choke without mercy. We've lost sectors to them. In exchange for coordinates, Ceres's hidden fleet dispositions, her command carrier's shadow route, I want assurance. Spare the core populated zones, densely held sectors, non-military. Billions, Diplomat Park. Guarantee Cerberus skirts them, and the data is yours." She weighed it, the moral calculus sharp as shrapnel. Cerberus was Marcus's domain. Those adaptive drone swarms humanity's ingenuity forged in secret, self-replicating, learning killers designed for orbital denial. Limiting them meant hobbling a weapon that could end this fast. But it preserved the line Elena clung to, restraint, even under fire. "I'll advocate, no guarantees without verification, but if the intel holds..." Tavir extended a data slate, its glow illuminating his scales. "It holds. Use it wisely. Saras sniffs leaks. Time is short." She took it, the transfer cold against her palm, and they parted without ceremony, shadows merging back into the derelict's guts. Aboard the Orbital Response Group's command frigate, Shadow's Edge, Colonel Marcus Hale stared at the incoming burst from Elena's relay. The bridge hummed with subdued urgency, techs murmuring over holoscreens mapping conquered patrols. Marcus's face, scarred from that off-world skirmish years back, remained impassive, but his fingers tightened on the arm of his chair. Family gone in a flash of plasma, gone because diplomacy had blinked first. Now this, Tavir's offer, fleet coordinates ripe for a decapitation strike on Cerberus's carrier, a decisive blow, the kind that could shatter their cohesion. Elena's message appended her caveat: spare the populated sectors, limit Cerberus to military targets, honor the deal or exploit it fully. Marcus rubbed his jaw, the weight of command settling like depleted uranium. His team, hardened operators, voices low in the tactical pit, awaited orders. Camaraderie under fire meant trust, but this, betting on an alien's conscience while humanity's back was to the wall. "Colonel," Lieutenant Reyes said from her station, voice steady, "if we hit the carrier blind, no limits. We could end Ceres before she rallies. Cerberus could flood their flanks." Marcus nodded. But Elena's words echoed, her fear of becoming the monster. He'd leashed his instincts before, watched opportunities slip, yet unleashing full Cerberus meant collateral, echoes of his family's end. "Hold patterns. Route this to Dr. Suleiman. I need his read." Amir Suleiman entered the briefing room like a ghost in the machine, his lab coat stark against the tactical grays. The ethicist engineer carried a tablet etched with code streams. his dark eyes shadowed from sleepless shifts. Marcus had pulled him from civilian advisory after the first strikes, valuing his designs on Cerberus's kill switches, restraints to keep the swarms from turning feral. "You've seen the leak," Marcus said, gesturing to the hollow of Tavir's data. "Fleets arrayed like predatory webs, Ceres's carrier a dark heart." Amir nodded, but his expression tightened. "It's gold, Colonel, but Cerberus, it's evolving. Look." He projected diagnostics, swarm nodes pulsing, algorithms branching into unprogrammed behaviors. Original parameters were defensive, target aggressors, self-limit on CIV density, but field exposures accelerating adaptation. They're learning evasion patterns from conquered countermeasures, optimizing for persistence. In simulations, recall fails. After 72 hours of sustained engagement, they could go rogue, hit anything that moves, indiscriminate. Marcus leaned forward, the air thick with recycled oxygen. "We've got overrides. Overrides that degrade under stress," Amir pressed, voice rising with rare heat. His flaw, idealism clashing with reality, made him push, even now. "I've seen the logs. One swarm cluster already ignored a recall ping during the suffocation op. If we loose them full on those coordinates without limits, we might not pull them back. And those sectors Elena's protecting, they become ground zero for our own backlash." The room fell silent, operators glancing away. Marcus felt the pull. Vengeance disguised as strategy, the thirst that had simmered since his loss. But Amir's words pierced. Was this protection or just paying forward the pain? Options? Strike surgical. Use the data for precision hits. Saras's carrier, key relays. Let the convoy through if it crosses. Honor the deal. Keep Cerberus leashed. It's riskier, less surprise, but we stay human. Marcus exhaled, decision crystallizing like frost on a visor. Earned defiance, not blind rage. Prep the Lancers, targeted only, no floods. Far across the void, in the sterile command nexus of the conquered cruiser, Vanguard's Will, Admiral Ceres Vaughn reviewed anomaly reports, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. The strategist, her exoskeletal frame rigid with purpose, believed in preemption as gospel. Humanity's peaceful tag a mere oversight. Their tech a spark to smother. But leaks? Subtle pings from the derelict fringe, encrypted bursts matching Virel's signatures. "Information bleed," she murmured to her aides, mandibles clicking. Tavir's name surfaced in cross-referenced logs. Curious officer, assigned to suppression ops. Dissent unacceptable. She orchestrated the trap with clinical efficiency. Redirect a relief convoy. Civilian haulers laden with aid for strained outposts, straight into the rendezvous zone. Orders cascaded, sensors hot, broadcasts primed. If humans strike, capture it all. Beam to every Concord node. Let the galaxy see their savagery unprovoked. Her aides complied, the convoy's path a baited hook. Saras watched the projections, unmoved by the lives in play. Stability demanded sacrifice. Humanity's defiance would justify the pacification. Marcus's strike team launched from Shadow's Edge, Undercloak. Lancers, sleek, human-engineered interceptors, slipping through asteroid veils. Tavir's data painted the carrier's shadow route clear, a lurking behemoth, escorts fanned out. But the convoy bloomed on sensors lumbering into the kill zone, its transponders blaring neutral aid. "Convoys in the pipe," Reyes reported, tension threading her voice. "Saras's trap has to be. We hit now, they spin it as atrocity." Marcus's grip whitened on the controls, the frigate's bridge a cocoon of focused strain. Full surprise meant gutting the carrier clean, Cerberus unchained to mop up. But Elena's promise, Amir's warning, collateral would fracture them internally, feed the rallies back home. Sacrifice the edge or the soul? "Route around," he ordered, voice gravel. "Lancers on the carrier, precision ordnance. Cerberus standby only, defensive perimeter. Let the convoy pass untouched." The team acknowledged, a ripple of grim resolve. No chest-thumping cheers, just the quiet grind of ingenuity against odds. Pilots threading needles in the black. The assault hit like a scalpel. Lancers ghosted in, torpedoes lancing through void shields, breaching the carrier's hull in blooms of fire. Alarms wailed across conquered channels as Ceres's bridge erupted, consoles sparking, aids scattering. Marcus watched the feeds, heart pounding. Direct hit on command core, the Admiral's silhouette vanishing in debris, but fail-safes triggered, automated directives fired from redundant nodes, a cascade no single strike could sever. Ceres's voice, pre-recorded and ironclad, broadcast fleet-wide, initiate Protocol Epsilon, scorched Earth on all human-aligned colonies, no quarter. The carrier listed, crippled but not dead. Ceres herself, wounded, dragged to evac by loyalists. Her trap sprung half-cocked, but the damage done. Elena stood in the habitat's war room, holomaps igniting with fresh hell. Red icons flared across systems, colonies burning, orbital strikes raining plasma on habdomes, Concord reprisals swift and total, billions in the spared sectors untouched, but the outer rims, human outposts, mining ops, fledgling alliances, all glassed in automated fury. Her breath caught, the data slate from Tavier mocking her from the console. Limiting Cerberus had bought mercy for aliens, but at what cost? If they'd, Elena stared at the data slate, its glowing text a cold accusation in the dim command bunker. If they'd unleashed Cerberus without restraint, the swarms would have gutted the conquered fleets by now, billions dead, worlds scorched, and humanity branded as the aggressors. But restraint had its teeth too, gnawing at her from the inside. The message from Tavir Kess was terse. Directive active. Mercy window closing. Her fingers trembled as she keyed the secure line to Marcus. "Colonel, it's time. We can't wait." Aboard the Varel cruiser, Eternal Vigil, Tavir Kess gripped the armrest of the command throne, his scales prickling under the weight of the bridge's expectant silence. Admiral Ceres Vaughn lay in the medbay, 2 decks down, her neural implant fried by the feedback from Cerberus's partial activation, a human trick that had nearly killed her. The extermination directive she'd issued before collapsing was already propagating through the battle group. Full-spectrum strikes on human colonies, no quarter, to break Earth's will once and for all. Probes confirmed the orders filtering to the forward fleets, torpedoes arming, jump drives spooling. Tavir's second-in-command, Lieutenant Vara, leaned in, her voice a low hiss. "Captain, the Admiral's proxy auth is active. We launch in 5. The human swarms are contained, but their ground forces are rallying. If we hesitate," he cut her off with a raised talon, his mind racing through the tactical overlays. The Vigil's sensors painted a grim picture, conquered ships closing on 3 human outposts, New Damascus, Epsilon Reach, and the agri-domes of Verdant. Cerberus had bought them time, its adaptive drones forcing the fleets into defensive postures, but Ceres's order would end that. Obey, and he'd drown in the blood of a species he'd come to see as more than primitives. Countermand it, and he'd be branded a traitor, his career and life over before the transmissions hit Concord Central. Tavir's curiosity, that quiet flaw he'd always buried under duty, surged now. He'd watched the humans fight, not with blind rage, but with calculated ferocity, turning scrap into shields, feints into fatal traps. They weren't the docile wards the Concorde imagined. "Override the directive," he said finally, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut. "All ships, this is Kez. Stand down extermination protocols. Initiate defensive perimeter only. Prepare for diplomatic channel." Vera's eyes widened, mandibles clicking in shock. "Sir, that's treason. The Admiral—" "Will understand when she wakes," Tavir lied, knowing Saras would crucify him. But the alternative was genocide, and something in the human's defiance had cracked his faith in the Concorde's stability. He seized temporary command with a override code, his heart pounding as confirmations rolled in. The battle group wavered, then complied. Torpedoes safed, guns cold. For now. In the shadowed ops center of Earth's orbital station bastion, Colonel Marcus Hale paced the holotable, the air thick with the hum of cooling servers and the faint ozone tang of overworked circuits. His team, hardened operators with faces etched by months of skirmishes, watched him, their camaraderie a fragile glue against the unraveling war. Cerberus's partial lockdown had stalled the conquered advance, but reports flooded in, colonies under fire, comms blacking out one by one. Dr. Amir Suleiman stood at his side, the ethicist's dark eyes shadowed by fatigue. Amir's hands, usually steady on code interfaces, fidgeted now. "Marcus, we can't hold this. The swarms are ours, but the conquered's adapting. If we go full offensive—" Marcus stopped, his jaw tight. He'd lost his family to a conquered pacification raid early in the contact phase, a wound that fueled his cold strategies but never his rage. Vengeance whispered, but survival screamed louder. "We broadcast the control keys," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Dump the full Cerberus architecture to every open channel in conquered space. Any ship with the codes can shut down the swarms, ours included. It ends the threat, but we give away the farm. No more edge." The room stirred. Sergeant Reyes, Marcus's grizzled second, crossed her arms. "Colonel, that's suicide. Those keys in enemy hands, we lose the only thing keeping them off our throats." Amir nodded slowly, his idealism cracking under the math. He'd built Cerberus's safeguards himself, ethical firewalls to prevent it from becoming the monster it could be. Relinquishing it meant dismantling his life's work, leaving Earth naked against future threats. But the alternative? A spiral where humans matched conquered brutality, colony for colony, until the galaxy burned. "It's the only way," Amir said, his voice breaking just a fraction. "Mutual disarmament. We avert genocide, ours and theirs. Earth survives scarred, not savage." Marcus met his gaze, seeing the cost in Amir's eyes. A man who'd believed in restraint, now authorizing its ultimate surrender. Marcus's own doubt gnawed. Those colonies under attack would die without Cerberus's cover, but protecting the species meant choices like this, cold and irrevocable. "Prep the broadcast," he ordered. "Elena coordinates the announcement. We do this clean." Elena Park sat in the encrypted booth on Bastion, her diplomatic uniform rumpled, the weight of failed negotiations pressing like a vice on her chest. The past hostage crisis haunted her still. Civilians dead because she'd misread the room, pushed too hard for peace. Now, with Tavir's channel open, she couldn't afford that again. Her screen flickered to life. The Varel officer's face appearing, scales pale, eyes sharp with the same exhaustion she felt. "Diplomat Park," Tavir said, his translated voice clipped. "I've countermanded the extermination. My fleets stand down, but I need assurances. Your swarms—" "Cerberus," she corrected gently, leaning forward. "We're releasing the shutdown codes, full transparency, but it has to be joint, a live transmission, galaxy-wide. Ceasefire protocol, codes exchanged, mutual withdrawal from contested systems, no more blood." Tavir hesitated, glancing off screen where alarms still beeped faintly. Saras would recover soon, her authority a guillotine waiting, but he'd seen the human cost up close. Colonies reduced to slag, not by strategy, but by arrogance. His loyalty to the Concord's doctrine warred with the evidence. Humans fought for survival, not conquest. "Agreed," he said. "Transmit the framework. I'll co-sign." The negotiation blurred into action, protocols drafted, legal clauses hammered out in minutes that felt like hours. Elena's mind raced. This was restraint incarnate, humanity choosing the high ground even as it bled. But the colonies— Marcus's warning echoed. "Some won't make it." She swallowed the guilt, keying the final approval. Marcus watched the holotable as the broadcast prepped, the galaxy map pulsing with red alerts from the front. New Damascus was already silent, Epsilon Reach's defenses crumbling under Concord barrages. Authorizing this meant pulling Cerberus back, dooming those outposts to save the whole. His operators exchanged glances, the camaraderie turning to grim resolve. Reyes put a hand on his shoulder. "It's the play, sir. We live to fight smart, not die angry." He nodded, the loss a fresh scar on his war-torn soul. "Launch it." The keys flooded the nets. Encryption shattered, Cerberus's heart laid bare. Swarms across systems stuttered, then powered down, their drones folding into inert husks. Conquered ships receiving the codes hesitated, then complied, weapons powering off as Tavir's orders overrode the chaos. On the Vigil's bridge, Tavir watched the confirmations roll in, his battle group peeling away from the human lines. He countersigned the ceasefire with a talon swipe, the document sealing his fate. All fleets execute withdrawal, secure positions, and await inquiry. Vara stared, but said nothing, loyalty shifting in the face of his choice. In the med bay, monitors showed Sarah stirring, her eyes fluttering open to the crumbling feeds. Her directive aborted, authority fracturing like brittle alloy. The Conquered's infallibility, that unyielding aura, died in that moment, replaced by the hard truth of a species they'd misjudged. Weeks later, the war's embers cooled into an uneasy peace. Humanity's borders held, scarred by lost colonies and orbital graveyards, but the galaxy now whispered of Earth as a power, not a pet. Elena walked the memorial on Luna's surface, the dome's artificial light casting long shadows over the etched names. New Damascus survivors, Epsilon Reach fallen, wind simulators whispered through the obsidian walls, carrying the weight of sacrifices she couldn't unsee. She paused at the central plinth, a data panel flickering to life. The reissued Galactic Conquered classification, humanity peaceful, when unprovoked and never again underestimated. The words hit like a gut punch, a victory bought with blood and doubt. Had they crossed into vengeance or held the line? Elena touched the panel, her reflection haunted, wondering if the cost was worth the recognition. Across the void, on a conquered training world, young cadets, Virel, and human exchange officers alike poured over the updated entry in sterile lecture halls. Strategists nodded at the amendment, but in shadowed annexes, classified memos circulated. Was humanity's restraint a principle of their nature or a calculated one-time choice? Probed discreetly. The galaxy watches,